Justice prevailed in the courtroom in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, but the injustice continues in the court of public opinion, and perhaps even in the federal government. Why does this character assassination, this political persecution, and potentially DOJ prosecution continue after the facts of the case made Rittenhouse's innocence clear? Because Rittenhouse will be forever guilty of the worst crime of all, defending himself in the face of the left-wing mob. For the left, there can be no resistance. As the defense said,
everybody takes a beating sometimes, right?
Take your beating because the left demands submission to its power. Remember, the left locked you and your loved ones at home while unleashing rioters, looters, and pillagers on America's streets throughout the summer of 2020, cheering them on or at best saying nothing, supporting the anti-law and order defund the police movement, and even calling for raising money to bail out the criminals, encouraging still worse behavior, all while ignoring basic facts that undercut the narrative of a systemically racist police system and a systemically racist America. It was never about that. It was always about creating division and exploiting it for power. And now we're dealing with the consequences. A massive surge in violent crime over the last 2 years, and of course the anti-cultural BLM revolution that's rampaged through every one of our most vital institutions, to disastrous effect. Speaking up and challenging, say, critical race theory will get you branded a racist, if not get the FBI sicked on you if you're a parent at a school board meeting. But the far worse act in the eyes of the ruling class is doing something. Doing something like what Kyle Rittenhouse did in terms of standing up and defending your community when it's under assault by a leftist mob fomented by the ruling class that manipulates and colludes with it. That's why our political class smeared him. Rittenhouse wasn't engaging in vigilante justice. Those who were attacking him were engaging in vigilante injustice. That's why Rittenhouse, though, because the facts of the case didn't align nicely for the left, was called a white supremacist, even though the people he shot, who were threatening his life, were white, and there wasn't a scintilla of evidence otherwise. And that's why the facts about Rittenhouse's gun, his relations to Kenosha, and a million other pertinent details were distorted by the media. That's why big tech censored those defending him and seeking to expose the truth. That's why platforms like GoFundMe barred defense funds for Rittenhouse. That's why a cop was fired for contributing to a defense fund when he finally had one. And that's why a mob had to threaten the jurors, including threatening to dox them, to try to intimidate them to not make a decision on the merits, but rather to make the politically correct decision. That is, to subvert justice. And remember that Kyle Rittenhouse ever set foot in Kenosha in the first place was purely a function of media and political class lies and an utter dereliction of duty to maintain law and order. Jacob Blake was not shot and killed by cops, nor was he defenseless. Cops arrived at the scene because of Blake's actions, which spurred a domestic disturbance call. Blake had a warrant for his arrest from a prior incident where he was charged with domestic violence offenses and a sexual assault. Blake scuffled with cops. He had a knife. He was ultimately shot during the struggle because of the threat of the knife, but not killed. What did the media and political class do? They spun a fake narrative, helping fuel a mob that Wisconsin's political leaders did nothing to put down, while innocents suffered physical harm and tens of millions of dollars in damages as the city burnt. Never forget this graphic. They sought to smear, silence, and bankrupt him so he couldn't defend himself and no one would defend him. Then they threatened to set the mob on those who would exonerate him in court. Kyle Rittenhouse is a living indictment of our ruling class because he was compelled to act in response to its failings. A ruling class that tells big lie after big lie, incites and underwrites societal destruction, tells cops not to pursue the criminals, but deputizes them to wreck the lives of dissenters from ruling class orthodoxy. For that, Rittenhouse will never stop paying, even if he sues the pants off everyone who sought to destroy him and wins. And there's something else worth noting here. While the cries of white supremacism and vigilante injustice continue, this case perfectly follows the ruling class's entire modus operandi right now. The left supports a disastrous policy, then it uses the outraged reaction of those suffering it to justify still further disastrous policies. The pattern is clear. Smear, malign, inflict pain upon the political opposition, and if the opposition has the gall to refuse to go along with it, exploit that response to justify completely destroying them and usurping maximum power in the process. Hence the pivot right now, of course, to make the Rittenhouse story a gun control one. You have to disarm people after leaving them defenseless by neutering the police. Let's see this for what it really is. They want you defenseless in the face of their onslaught. That is why it is ever more imperative to stand confidently, courageously, and boldly for the American way of life and all that that entails. We cannot submit to the tyranny.